everybody, my name is Stephanie and I'm back again with another sewing tutorial. I had a nurse to message me yesterday to ask if I would make a fabric headband with these buttons because when they work a long shift and they have to wear the N95 mask, it causes a pressure point behind their ears. So she sent me the pattern and I made a couple of these yesterday, and since then I've probably had 100 people to message me wanting to know if I would make some. So I just can't keep up with the demand. So I'm hoping that some of you sewing ladies out there will make some of these because apparently they are in very high demand. I even had a nurse from California to message me and ask, would I please make some and ship them to California because they're in dire need of these out there. These are super easy to make. To me, they're easier to make than the mask and they're faster. So I'm gonna give y'all a quick tutorial of how to make these fabric headbands with the button that goes behind the ear, and they loop their mask onto the back of the button instead of the back of their ear. So again, you start with our fat quarter, which is my go-to sewing material for almost everything that I do because they're very easy. But this is a fat quarter. If you didn't see my first video about cutting and about fat quarters, go back to my YouTube channel or scroll back on Facebook and you can see the fat quarter tutorial and how to cut with a rotary cutter. Out of a fat quarter, you're gonna be able to make 2 fabric headbands, okay? So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your fat quarter and you're gonna fold it in half like this, not counting this factory edge right here, okay? So you're gonna fold it in half and then you're gonna line it up on your rotary cutter and with your mat and your acrylic ruler and your rotary cutter, and you're gonna get some straight lines. So if you didn't see that before, I'm gonna demonstrate that. You wanna make sure that this edge is lined up on your black line, and then to get a straight cut on this side, you're gonna line everything up with your acrylic ruler and you're gonna make a cut so that everything is straight. So I've got my first cut. The next cut that you're gonna make, and this is the pattern, I can attach it below, but your next cut is the headband is 4 inches wide. So you're gonna need to cut 4 of these to get your 2 headbands in. So I'm gonna take my acrylic ruler again, and my next cut is gonna be at 4 inches. So I take my cutter. So now I've got a 4-inch strip, and I'm gonna do that for the length of the fat quarter, which is going to give me 4 pieces. So there's 2, 3, and 4. So if you've never used a mat and a rotary cutter, it's a lifesaver. You don't have to use it, you can use scissors, but it's much easier and it's much more exact when you use a rotary cutter. Okay, so after you have made your 4-inch strips, the next step is you're gonna take the 2 4-inch strips and you're gonna place them right sides together. Line everything up, then you're gonna fold it over in half again, like this. So, my fat quarter, fold it in half, make my 4-inch strips, then I take 2 of the pieces and I put them right sides together, and then I put them back on my cutting mat, and then the next cut is this piece of fabric has to be 9.5 inches long. So I take my ruler and I count 9 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.5. I'm gonna line that up and I'm gonna make my second cut. So now I've got a 4-inch wide strip that's 9.5 inches long. So then I'm gonna put it back on my cutting mat, line up all of my edges, and if you'll notice on the pattern, it tapers at the edge to 2 inches wide. So you may be wondering, well, how do I do that? How do I make the taper? It's really easy if you have a rotary cutting mat. So what I'm gonna do is take my fabric marker, come around here, Tori, so you can see this. So it's 4 inches wide, and I want it to taper down to 2 inches wide at the base. And then if you'll look here at the pattern, from here to here is 5 inches. So what's really easy is you take the ruler, and I'm gonna put the ruler on my 2-inch mark here, and I'm gonna move the ruler in like this till it hits the fabric at 5 inches. And it's gonna cut off this little triangle right here. Cut. Okay, and that's gone. Then I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. I'm gonna find my 2-inch mark, put my ruler on it, and then I'm gonna angle the ruler in till it hits 5 inches, like that. And then I'm gonna hold it and I'm gonna cut. So now I've got everything I need right here to make the fabric headband. So since I've already put my right sides together, all I do is open it up like this. I'm gonna take it to the sewing machine and I'm gonna sew a 1/4-inch seam all the way around, but I'm gonna leave the 2 ends open. So that's very important, leave the 2 ends open. So let's take it to the sewing machine and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so I'm ready on my sewing machine. I've got everything lined up, and then I'm gonna come in and start sewing with a 1/4-inch seam on the end. So remember, I like the function to push that so that when I stop sewing, my needle stays engaged. So I'm gonna start sewing, back stitch a little bit, and then I'm gonna sew all the way around. When I get to that little corner, I'm gonna stop, and I'm gonna lift up my foot, and I'm gonna pivot my fabric like that. Get to where you can stop. So now we're ready for the next step. So I've sewn all the way around a 1/4-inch seam, and then I back stitched at the beginning just like we always do, and your right sides are together. So the next step, and this is a little bit tight, but you're gonna turn the headband inside out. So you're just gonna have to, once you get it started, it's easy, but it's a little tight there at the beginning. So this is the way I do it. There could be a better way, I'm sure, but this is just the way that I started doing it, and it worked for me. So you're gonna turn it inside out, you're gonna get it going, and you're gonna pull it all the way through. And then you're gonna take it to the iron, and you're gonna iron it down flat. So once you get that turned inside out, and then you iron it, you end up with one that'll look like this. So this is another one that's been sewn, turned inside out, and then ironed down flat. And if you'll look, the ends are open. Both ends are open. So what you do when you get to this step is, it's really easy. You're gonna fold that end down about 1/4 of an inch, like so. And then you're gonna take a piece of 1-inch elastic that's been cut 4 inches in length. And then you're gonna stick that little piece of elastic about 1/4 of an inch into your little pocket right there. Then you're gonna put it back on the sewing machine, and you're gonna sew your elastic in place. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that real quick. That's a piece that's gonna be tugged on a lot, so you wanna make sure that you sew over that a couple times to make sure it's very reinforced. Make sure it's straight. I'm gonna back stitch over it. So I did that 3 times. Then you're gonna cut that. Normally I wouldn't use white thread on this, but it was just what I had on the machine. So then you're gonna wrap this around, and you're gonna do the same thing on the other end. You're gonna tuck this in on the ends, about 1/4 of an inch. You're gonna roll it down. And the reason you do that is so that raw edge is not exposed and won't fray when you wash it. I'm gonna turn that down. I'm gonna take the other end of the elastic and stick it down in there about 1/4 of an inch. And then put it back on the machine, make sure everything's straight. Put it back on the machine, and I'm gonna sew this end up. Okay, see my fabric bunch right there? So I'm gonna lift my foot, I'm gonna make that correction. If you see an error, don't just keep going. You wanna stop right then and fix your mistake, because if you just keep going and ignore it, it's gonna make an ugly place in your fabric. So I'm gonna keep stitching all the way to the end. Then I'm gonna back stitch back over the whole thing, and I'm gonna come back over it one more time. Lift my foot. Okay. So now we've got this much of the fabric headband. So now what you'll do is you're gonna put it back on the machine and you're gonna make a 1/8 inch stitch all the way around, and that reinforces everything. See that little white stitch going all the way around? That reinforces it from the outside. The last thing that you do is you're going to put a button, and you're gonna measure 1.5 inches up from where the fabric starts. That's just an estimation. It's gonna end up, when you wear it, it's gonna end up being kind of right back here behind where the ear would be. But if I measured, that was about 1.5 inches up where I sewed it on. The buttons that I bought came from Walmart, and I just bought a jar of buttons. This jar of buttons was $10.88, and it's got so many buttons for a ton of projects. They recommended the 1-inch buttons, which is about this size, but I did another one with the button that was a little bit smaller, and it worked just as well. Now, a tiny button is gonna be too small, and I think this one would be really big and heavy. So this button is the ideal size, and like I said, this will make a ton of projects, and this is about the 1-inch size button. So that's how you make the fabric headband, and I hope a lot of you will watch this tutorial and start making some because this is a really, really big need all across the United States.